Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing today on Wonderful Wednesday? And you know what that means. It is Conversation for Humanity time. And yes, again, I am on the road because I got the text message around probably an hour and a half ago. My wife said, Chris, you better come pick me up because I'm getting off at 4 o'clock. So I was like, I know what I need to do. I need to be mobile today, so I got to be running. So I'll run in today. So today we're doing Conversation for Humanity, my favorite place, Zaxby's today. So, of course, our special guest today is Elizabeth Walker, who's a great friend of mine, and she's doing great work in her own right. And she wanted to come share her story with us today. So, Elizabeth, how are you doing today on Wonderful Wednesday?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a fantastic time to talk with you. There's all kinds of things in the works. So perfect timing, really.
All right. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here again today. So, again, for everyone who wants to join into the conversation, not only will I put it in the uh, LinkedIn comment section of today's event, but also I'll put it also here up on YouTube, so you guys can be able to join into the conversation. Just good afternoon, Thomas. Glad to see you here. Go click this link right here, and you will be coming onto the show. And what we'll do is we'll let our guest come share her story and everything like that. So we'll let her do that. So we'll let Elizabeth share her story, and then just let it. The whole show will be hers. And but if we have that time in there to be able to take questions or answers. And hello, Sue. Glad to see you here too as well. So we would love to hear from you too as well. So there is Sue and there is Matthew. We would love to have you here in and of itself. So again, like I said, click that link. Well, Elizabeth, it is your show. Thank you so much for joining us, and please come share your story with us today on Conversation for Humanity.
Okay, awesome. So one of the first things I want to focus on with you today is to start the conversation with a highlight for later this month in August. I have an audio event that I'll be broadcasting live. And we'll also be in real life in Hollins, Virginia, for podcasting for young women leader executives. And so that's what I'm talking about with you today. That's a really good focal point, is podcasting for executives and leaders. And a big highlight is women as far as a segment of who I'm speaking to. And so if you want me to start off with a story or background, I can tell you a little bit about how the podcast started. Okay, I see thumbs up. The podcast is actually pretty new. I started that last year, and this year will be my first major workshop in real life in Roanoke, Virginia at the Jefferson Center, and that's a comedy for business workshop. So as a podcaster, I meet people and bring speakers to my area and put them on stage. But the live audio events that you can access from anywhere here on LinkedIn are segments of these topics as well. And podcasting for executives is one of them. So the reason why podcasting is where I'm going to start the story, right, is because that's the question I get the most is, what do you do with your podcast? And then, but what do you really do? And so, so the answer is the podcast is where you can find me every week. And it is what I really do all the time, every day. That's because that's how I meet people. So coming to your group and coming to this conversation today, right, that's where podcasting and my story comes into play, is as a tool, finding these things in our business and our day-to-day business journey that help us meet new people. And so podcasting is how I do that. But that's also a product that shows up every week online for people to view and consume. So I am also sharing, the 1-2 steps on how to do this for yourself if you are someone who wants to speak and wants to practice building authority with your voice and your field. My live events are mostly to just hold space to share with the audience how this is something that you can do in your field with just your cell phone. I'm not selling a course per se. It's really a discussion event where I talk about what I know and why I think it's important to take advantage of using free resources as a way to practice putting a stake in the ground, if you will, with your voice. So what that does for me personally is gets promotion and eyeballs to events that I eventually will charge a fee for, right? Will sell a ticket for. That's literally you have to buy and come in person. But the live audio events and the podcasting, that's really the day-to-day grind work, if you will. But it's something that I happen to really enjoy doing. So for anybody out there who is interested in, how to build something into their day-to-day business life that you get joy out of, that you kind of can build as an evergreen resource for yourself. That's why podcasting I find really lucrative in terms of an investment of your time.
Awesome, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for that. And like I said, I've been on a lot of her LinkedIn audios, and she does a great job. But I want to ask you, though, Elizabeth, to really get to know who you are. And I truly believe that's a better question to ask, not what you do, because what you do is literally a natural byproduct of who you are. How did you start along this journey to where you are at today, and from which you started from? How did that journey play out, number one? And how's that process been for you? And what have you come out of that knowing, or even really seeking, or even discovering on that journey?
I'm glad that you're asking this question. I've gotten this question once or twice before. And at one point, I answered in an interview that I started a podcast out of frustration. And after that interview, I thought, I'm not sure that I really did justice to that answer. So this might be a second chance for me to elaborate and rethink that answer. I can't emphasize how much using, the tools that you already have in your home office, your cell phone, a basic laptop, even if it's just a Chromebook where you just have, internet access or cloud access or whatever. So I started because I was frustrated, because I was trying to figure out a way to create a business for myself. And I had sort of an idea of the kind of environment I wanted to be in. I come from a background of sales. I also have a lot of friends and family members that are festival vendors, who are artisans, who are production people. And in my college years, I studied a lot of theater and film production. So at some point, I might rephrase my resume to say that I was actually a business and arts interdisciplinary major, even though I don't have anything on paper that says that. So after a long period of being in an office and being in traditional sales roles, I had a couple of life changes, and I found myself in a position where I can't keep doing that. I can't keep sitting in an office. It's time to do something completely different. And if I don't start right now, then I don't want to do this I don't want to be in an office cubicle for another 10, 15 years. I quite honestly physically can't really afford to do that. So being able to have some creative impact, some creative control, and be able to do something that is basically a no-cost startup is where I was starting, right? It's like, I have to figure out, how do I get myself involved professionally with people that I want to make connections with, and how do I get my foot in the door, right? To get seated around the table with people, basically, who will look at me and listen to me and say, hey, what are you up to? Do you want to come to this or that event? Do you, I need a reason for people to be in a conversation with me. So starting a podcast with a cell phone or a laptop and no particularly fancy microphone or anything like that, just a way to record a file for free on a Zoom call and start figuring out how to load that onto a free or very low cost website and have a place to start where you can bring people, right? Hey, neighbor Joe, I heard you like podcasts. I just started one. Will you listen to an episode and give me a thumbs up if you like it? And so that when you asked me for a background story, I was bored and frustrated with the idea of continuing down a path of sitting in a cubicle.
And I love that. And Sue asks you today, Elizabeth, do you interview people on your podcast?
Yeah, that's what the podcast is. So what we do is Dear Business Coach podcast is where I showcase experts, coaches, and have business spotlights. Sometimes those things blend together, right? So if you are a business coach, for example, one person comes to mind, my friend Brianna Willie. She's actually a counselor, a therapist, and so she has a private practice. Now she also recently has started coaching others how to go out on their own to start their own private practice. So that is a business coaching side of her services. So when she was on my podcast, I was interviewing her as a business coach. And then of course, she in her first life, if you will, is a therapist. So that became a background about her, right? That was more of a business spotlight or a personal background. So that is what Dear Business Coach podcast is. And that's funny that you say that because, or that you asked me that because, I interview coaches. I'm not particularly a business coach, right? I can't tell you if your profit margin is good or not. I have no clue. You have to go to somebody who is, specializes in reading numbers on your industry for something like that. But Dear Business Coach podcast, right, is to get coaches and experts and businesses a place to showcase themselves. So that started out with conversations with anyone who would accept an invitation, right? So you start with a friend or you start with somebody who's just really in a good mood that day and decides they have time to talk to you.
And Elizabeth, I kid you not, the gift of invitation is something truly special in and of itself. Because when we bestow that gift and invitation with people, no matter if you're, again, a Fortune 500 CEO who knows all their numbers and all knows the ins and outs on everything, we can still have a hand and even an invitation to receive and surround ourselves with people who know what they know far better than us. And that's why I truly believe when it comes to human connectivity, there's not no place that we can't be involved in or a organization or community, because again, what's the one thing that interconnects us all? It's our very humanity. It's right there. So again, like you can say, hey, if you look for coaching advice, I may not be your cup of tea, but I know people who do and everything like that. But see, what I really love about you, Elizabeth, is in some way, shape, matter, or form, you really are taking up the mantle of being a connector. And you know how to connect with people, not only on a human connective level, but you can be able to say, hey, if you're on this podcast and it leads into something else, that's going to be a beautiful thing. Because if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't lead into that. I mean, am I correct? That's the way you want to really approach not only your business, but actually the podcast in and of itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's exactly right. So the opportunity to put yourself in a position to make an offer to somebody and have a conversation. So even if you don't have uh, a weekly show, right? You don't have to be on twice a week. Once a week is a pace that I like. That's the schedule I like. Dr. Brianna Willie, her podcast is, I think, once a month, right? So she has a specific cadence. So that's how want to think about building something for yourself that fits into your schedule, or that is a schedule that works for you. And so when you are thinking about creating an offer, when you want to create an opportunity for yourself to meet someone and create a professional contact, all you have to do is have an invite and a time and a place to meet. If you have a Zoom, and now obviously there are all kinds of free ways to record, but if you have a free Zoom account, the limit is 40 minutes. You can schedule a 30-minute conversation with someone, and that's a free file that you can turn into any kind of content or episode, audio or video, and that is free. So the way that invitation works, right, is a few sentences in a short email. So when you come to one of my live audio events that is about podcasting for executive speakers or young women leaders, what I'm actually doing is saying the first thing that we want to consider is having a platform ready, and so that we're going to take away all of the layers that where that could be scary or difficult or cost money. So if you're here on LinkedIn and you're listening, I know that you are broadcasting, we are broadcasting right now in probably more than one place, but if you're on a LinkedIn live audio, for example, if you're listening to me right now, you have exactly what you need to make a file to release audio content for $0. And you don't have to have a business or a business name in order to do that. So, Chris Berryman, I can say, my name's Elizabeth Walker. I have a profile here on LinkedIn, and I am interested in the work that you're doing. Can we have a short meet and greet for a potential podcast interview? And I am going to guess that more than 50% of the time, Chris Berryman's going to say, well, let me see what you got. Right? Let me see what your details are. And so for those who are listening, if you're following along, right now is the important part in this step, right? You've sent a 2 or 3 sentence email or message to someone you'd like to have a conversation with, and stop and let them respond. Do not, my personal approach is not to send a bio or a background. You're already on LinkedIn, for example, sending a message or an email. So even if the only thing that the potential person you are reaching out to can see is a headline in your LinkedIn profile, for me, that's enough to respond to somebody and say, well, they seem interesting and nice. Sure, let's have a meet and greet. And that's when you just can offer a time and a place. So the conversation in of itself, right, the offer just needs to start with, in my opinion, just offering a meeting that can be 15 minutes long. And then you can say, hey, I'd like to have an interview with you. Can I schedule a time with you? So that first meeting is your first step to that conversation. And now, even if that meeting never happens, you will be surprised how many people will want to record with you right away. But if that meeting gets pushed down the road or never happens, you now have a new friend who knows that you have a professional presence. So a couple of things have already happened for that prospect in their eyes on you, right? Is one, you invited them, you offered something to them that was about them, right? So they're excited because you're excited about them. You didn't say, hi, I'm Elizabeth, I'm a superstar, you would really benefit from being on my show. you said, hey, I'm starting out. I'd like to ask you some questions about your work because I'm interested in you. And then that's enough, right, for someone to take a look at you because they want to know, well, who is this person and why do they give a what about me? And so they're now you have a new friend. So that's an immediate way to make new connections online. And then when you show up to that first meet and greet, right, if all goes well and you end up in the same place at the same time and don't goof something up on your calendar, which happens too, then you've also demonstrated that you are a real human, right? So how many times do you get a message from somebody online and it just kind of never goes anywhere? You're like, I don't really know why are they messaging me. Okay, I know they have a website. Okay, they look friendly. That's fine. But we don't really, don't like what is it? What is it? What is it that I'm supposed to be getting out of this message? So immediately, if you show up to a short meet and greet with somebody, right? Step 1, ask in a short, sweet way. Step 2, offer a time and a place to meet, like at a Zoom, a live call. And this is just to say hi, 10 or 15 minutes. And then we have rapport going immediately because you're real people at a real time and place having a real conversation. So if you can do that, that's more work, and that is the actual step 1, 2, 3 to recording content. Not do I have the right phone and where am I recording, right? It's can we get conversation? If you start booking conversations, you'll figure out how to record it and where to put it.
And I love everything too. Again, the gift invitation. But Sue wanted to ask you, is your podcast on Spotify?
Yes, it is. Hi, Sue.
So what's the title of the Spotify podcast?
It's Dear Business Coach, the Dear Business Coach podcast.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And people are just loving it and everything like that. So Matthew says what you have shared already is very interesting. And Sue's been like amazing. And you encourage all these ladies to learn from each other when in fact Chris says it's form a community, which Bring Humanity Together is all about. Absolutely 110%. But I got to ask you, Elizabeth, in the many podcasts that you've done, and of course, maybe the many LinkedIn audios that you do each and every single time, was there one particular one, or maybe a few, it could have been a lot, that one interview that you may have had, or that one conversation had that light bulb moment, not only for you, but also for them too as well? Has that happened?
Well, it kind of happened that way for the comedian Clayton Fletcher. He's the guy. I have to highlight that conversation, right? Because I've recorded a couple of stories about that podcast meeting, and I use it when I'm talking up the workshop, right? So I've hired Clayton to come and speak in Roanoke, and that's at the Jefferson Center here in downtown Roanoke, Virginia in October. And so that's going to be a full day seminar. And Clayton's a professional comedian. And the reason why I interviewed him is because he has a book that he co-authored called the ROI of LOL. Actually, I have it here because I'm selling the show, right? So this is Clayton's book. So this is why I interviewed him. So when he came to the interview, he asked me, like what you're doing right now. So okay, when did you start your podcast? And tell me about yourself. And he's a super nice guy, right? But he was being nice, but also just making chit chat, right? And I sent him a short message online. It was an Instagram DM message. He's active on Instagram. He's at Clayton Comic, and he has a live streaming special out, a comedy special, Middle Child Syndrome, and that link is right in the bio of his Instagram, his Instagram page at Clayton Comic. So I sent him a DM message on Instagram and said, hey, would love to have you on the podcast sometime. I didn't expect him to respond, but he did. And so he did. So then we get to the then what happens is I sent him the calendar link, right? Just like we were talking about a few minutes ago, Chris. Right. So you send a short message and, hey, I'd like to have you on the podcast sometime. Wait for a response. He responded. I wasn't expecting that, but he did. So I sent back the calendar link. Awesome. Would you like to set up a meet and greet? So I got a calendar response, and I thought, well, maybe this is like an assistant or something, because that happens sometimes too. If you reach out to someone that has a personal assistant, you might get someone who's doing their email for them, and that's totally fine. So I thought, cool, got a calendar date. Very good. So we get to the podcast, and I'm just, thrilled. I'm like, this is fantastic. I think, this is the first time that somebody is on the podcast who's there because they have recently published a book, no less, right? This is not this, this is somebody who doesn't need to be on my podcast. He has other podcasts to be on, right? So I was impressed and tickled that even happened. And well, what happened was that I said, I started this LLC last year, but I haven't done anything with it yet. It's just a piece of paper and a name, where I'd like to have workshops, business workshops. And he said, well, maybe I should come down to Virginia and do this workshop with you. And I said, well, that would just be fantastic. Well, I thought he was making a nice conversation piece with me, and he wasn't kidding. So I held him to his offer, and he continued to, he proceeded to introduce me to his manager, and voila. So if somebody says yes, hold them to their offer and see what happens. I don't even know if I answered your question, but does one conversation stand out? Yes, absolutely. But there are a couple of other conversations too that are equally as important, and maybe even more so, is I didn't realize when I started inviting people to the podcast that I would run into a few people who have not had an opportunity to talk about their business in this way in an interview setting before. So one of my favorite things to do, and I'm not the only person who does this, right? There's another gentleman, Jesse Blunt, the Undiscovered Entrepreneur podcast. He interviews people, as the title of his podcast says, the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. He likes to interview people who he's putting a light on them as either a new entrepreneur or somebody who hasn't, maybe you've not heard of their name in the papers before, if you will, as they used to say. Are we allowed to say that anymore? In the papers? I don't know. So he talks to people that could be considered undiscovered in their own eyes, or whatever, for the podcast purposes. And so that's not exactly the model I was going for, but I landed into a segment of that, right? There are a lot of people out there who, for whatever reason, have never had an opportunity to tell their story. And the story doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, you didn't have to have your life didn't have to turn upside down for you to decide you wanted to make a business model and do something for yourself as a business owner, or make a shift in, like what Dr. Brianna Willies has done, was take what she knows as starting her own private practice as a counselor, as a therapist, and teaching other people how to do that for themselves to build their own private practice. She's one of those examples where, when we were done with her interview, she said she was happy with the interview. She's a wonderful person to work with. If you ever have the chance to be in one of her free workshops, or invite her to an interview, or be on her podcast, she's just an absolutely wonderful person to work with. And she's a counselor, so she kind of has this very natural way of just making you feel like really comfortable. So even just spending time with her, you come away feeling well rested. I don't know how she does that. But she ended up putting her interview on, like, front and center on her website. There goes my phone I don't know if it'll ring some more or not. She ended up putting her podcast that I recorded for her and edited on her website front and center. And I wasn't expecting her to do that. Right now, the name of the game, especially if you're brand new, is hopefully other people share your podcast and share your content. I know everybody here that's listening and will listen to this is doing that with their content now. I hope you are. But she honestly was in a place where she just she had never had a chance to tell her audience what exactly she was doing, right? So she has a customer base where she is a counselor and a therapist for them. And then she has a website where she can advertise and market her business coaching services to her market. And she's in a very niche market, right? So in a lot of ways, that's potentially easier, right? Sometimes if you have a more narrow audience, if you're in a more niche market, it's sometimes a little bit easier because you can get more specific about who you're talking to. When you're making a Facebook group, for example, business for therapists who want to start their own private practice is extremely that's the niche, right? And that's very specific, but part of the magic why that works, right, is because she's talking specifically to a person who a person who needs what, a specific person who does what, a counselor who is building a private practice, right? So she's really good at what she does, and she's not 100. She's a busy lady, but she's asking for new customers on the coaching side, right? So I guess she hasn't really had the time or the space or someone to ask her, tell me about how you got into your coaching business. So she ended up, showcasing an episode that I produced and edited on her website. So when that happened, I thought, aha, right. Right.
Alrighty, I love what this is already going already because now Sue has said, I love humor, but it's now my Audible library first purchase. Thank you. And of course,
Oh.
uh, he laughs at that and everything like that. But also, Matthew says, so true. We all have stories. Unfortunately, I am now balanced now. And then Sue just said, absolutely, you have a captive market. Don't have too many competitors. And I was but I want to ask you this, Elizabeth. From the podcasts that you've done and the LinkedIn audios and the literally the probably hundreds of clients that you have come across in and of itself, in those very conversations, do you make everything about them and not about you, and you literally are just not only listening but listening to learn, and then not only lead that conversation in maybe a completely different way, but also do it in a way that it really not only captivates them into the dynamic of what you're wanting to present, or maybe again have that light bulb moment go off and say, hey, I saw this opportunity and I want to present this to you. Can we do this? Have there been those kind of moments that you've had that and said, oh my word, this is, I never saw this. This came out of left field. I didn't even know it.
Yeah. Absolutely. You keep going to class and groups like this. I do have a group that I go to with a business coach, Scott Terry, and you can see an interview with him on my podcast. I spent a few weeks with him. It started out as help for what do I do to help make sure for marketing wise that this physical in real life person event that I'm hosting in October is the best that I can make it be. He's a really good teacher and a really good coach, and he's someone that you want to listen to if finding the importance of what you're spending your time doing every day matters to you, right? And one of the things that he said is, you're optimizing for relationships, right? So sometimes when you're thinking about what is your business model, it's what are you optimizing for? Can be profit. It can be, I'm optimizing for, let's say you're in real estate, maybe your goal is I'm optimizing for passive income, right? So you're trying to find like the least maintenance involved for a property or something like that. And so there's all kinds of things you can be optimizing for. And for me, that's conversations and relationships. And the reason why, right, is because you are interested in what is the next step. And so if you're thinking about each step along the way of a relationship with somebody, like for example, in a podcast interview, there are opportunities to, we're familiar with what it looks like to post something before an event, share during the event, and then post after the event thank yous or follow up with commentary. And you do exactly the same thing with your conversations with your podcast interview folks or your potential customers. There's a step before you have the meeting, there's a step after you have the meeting. And so going to class and meetings like this with coaches and other folks that are interested in this kind of frame of thinking and talking and sharing about it will help you kind of take a step back, right, for yourself to think about those little steps along the way. What's the next thing I can offer somebody? So instead of being too worried about like following a script or something, right? Because I used to be in sales, right? You know this about me, and I've said before here with you in groups that I was in a call center, right? You've heard me say in this particular conversation, cubicle, right? So yes, a call center cubicle. You are trained in those situations, right, to frame the script on the customer, and that is a totally formal and proper and expected, acceptable way to talk to a customer. And to take that out of a sales pitch format, in an office in a scripted way, it feels like you don't know what to do. You're like left, without your bumpers, right? Without your guidelines. But it's kind of similar in terms of you're getting to the next step, right? So what's the next thing that you're going to offer somebody? Well, the first, if you start a conversation with a customer on the phone, you might start off by seeing if they're willing to give you their name, and then a series of steps. And then eventually, if your team's doing a good job, then after the sale, then there's service, and then there might be somebody after you, or maybe you're that person that comes along in like a relay race, right? And maybe that customer needs a different service or an upsell or there's different steps along the way as to what that relationship looks like. And your connections with people are the same, can be looked at in the same kind of way, if that helps you mentally break down, what do I do in order to, continue to make offers to people, right? So once I've said, hey, I can help you out in this way, how do we keep that relationship going? And you can just break it up into those little tiny steps if that helps. And I think a lot of us like that interaction a little bit more. And it also lessens the risk for you as the person in the hot seat, if you will, feeling nervous about if this person is going to respond to you or not. Are they going to like me? Are they going to say yes? Am I going to have to face a no? What if they don't respond to me at all? Some of us are terrified of that too. And if micro steps, is the way that my favorite, business coach tells me that works for me, right? Is what's the step before this step? And so then all of a sudden you're just helping a person out, with, well, tell you what, we've got, your podcast interview is coming out on Wednesday. And then all of a sudden you also have an excuse to email them the next week and say, here's a clip of the interview that I made for you. And then after that podcast interview is done, you can follow up and ask them, do you have any upcoming opportunities where you'll be speaking again that I can share on my LinkedIn page for you? So little steps, little offers, and maybe keep a note for yourself, right? What are those things that feel good for you to offer? Sometimes we come up with an offer and realize that it's not really in your wheelhouse, right? Like when I first started the podcast, I thought, well, I'm going to have like this really professional follow-up email. And how am I going to do that, right? You're going to need some kind of fancy product at the end of the recording in order for you as the guest to feel like I've done a professional job for you. And after a couple of times of just sending a follow-up email once or twice, right? Do you want a big explanation of how the podcast was distributed, or do you just want me to send you like a link where you can share it? And now we're friends still. Right? So try to build little tiny gifts throughout your experience with somebody.
And I love that. And boy, you're just putting out the light bulb moments, Elizabeth. I kid you not. And I can't believe what's happening. And let me go back to what Matthew said just a little bit ago. He said, sometimes people can benefit from a mentor. You water me, I water you, which plants the seed of growth overall. And then Sue comes back and says this, Sue as well. She says, relay race, yes, pass on what part of BHG to another and maybe back again since BHG is organic as an organization. And then this is the thing that's I'm going to really have to have a conversation on. Matthew said, water is the essence of life, not money. We are water. And next thing you know, Sue jumps in and then says, Matthew, I think that's a great title for an audio room, Chris Berryman. Water is the essence of life, not money. When are you and Chris going to host a room together? And I say, it will be soon. But I want to go to you, Elizabeth, because this really hits me like anything. When you keep a conversation, literally, and the way I've always led these calls is literally unscripted, unfeathered, real and realistic in and of itself. When you have those moments that come before you, there are literally those unscripted moments and those unscripted opportunities. Do you take them for what they really are versus what people have probably have been leading us as a whole from a humanity perspective to see it what it really isn't? Because I truly believe we've been so conditioned from an opportunity or even connective standpoint to say you can't be connected to them because of X, Y, and Z, or you can't do this because you don't have this, or you're not that, or whatever that kind of stuff. But do you really take now opportunity in a completely different life than probably you probably saw yourself maybe 15 or 20 years ago? Has that journey also then changed too as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first started in sales, really in high school, probably, I mean, everybody's probably had some kind of or close to a retail experience of a job in, say, high school or college, right? And a lot of those experiences can be sales or customer service oriented. Even if you're behind the scenes, right? A lot of my family members and very, very, very close friends are waitresses and bartenders and food vendors, and that's where all of the customer service really starts. So it goes for everybody behind the scenes and everything, right? Is when you are first starting out in an industry, right, you want to present yourself as very professional. So you learn the scripting and you learn the lingo and you learn, okay, what are kind of the tricks of the trade to like make a customer happy. Like when you get involved with a service or a business, it takes a few minutes, right, to figure out like, what is it that people are really buying from me here? You know, what is the problem I'm really solving that people are signing up for? And that does take some sort of like on the job training to figure out. And just because you have sold forks doesn't mean you're going to be successful at selling spoons, right? So you have to kind of start over every time. So but learning how to kind of fit into the script at first is a good place to get started when you're like super green and super brand new. But I'll tell you, after being in a cubicle for a very, very, very long time, I did try an outside sales position, which was really funny because I thought that I was going to have to really start all over again and reinvent my professional formal self when I walk into an office building, this in life, sales versus over the phone. And I'm like, well, I know I'm comfortable with people. That's not the issue. But reinventing this image of myself, of what am I presenting when I physically meet somebody face to face? What do I sound and look like? And do you know what happened was the woman that was training me was younger than me. Not a big deal, but noticeably different approach in terms of, how we hang out socially. And she would walk into an office building and she would just say, hey, do you know who I would talk to about the t-shirts? I'm doing the t-shirts. And these people at the front desk or whatever have no idea who we are. Maybe, seriously, we're from 2 hours away. We don't live in your town. And we're here. And I walk into your office and I say, do you know who I would talk to about the t-shirts? I'm here to do the t-shirts. And so so now mind you that when I'm riding around with this woman and she's training me, and this is the script she's teaching me. I've already been to a formal company sales meeting before I even started. They flew me to Chicago from Virginia. And like I sat in a huge sales meeting before I even started on the road. And when I got to the customer's office, that's what I was trained to say. Do you know who I would talk to? So, and it works. Yeah.
There you go. It's like, oh my gosh, do you know who I know? Do you know that I know? It's like, you know this and everything. And I love that, Elizabeth. And also, Sue now says, since Thomas has come up with that, the essence of life is water and not money, you should attend that LinkedIn audio room with me and Matthew. So she says you got to attend there. But I get to ask, and that was a great one right there. I bet you just like, did she just say that? Really?
Yes.
Did that really? Like, wow. But let me ask you this, Elizabeth, because I know we get ready to close out here in less than about 10 minutes or so. In our journey in life, and I want to really take it really back out of the business realm and literally into a human being perspective. Do you believe in the journey that you've been on from where you are right now, from when you started? It's literally been about the journey, not the destination. And have you ever thought it in the reverse, that you really thought it was about the destination that I need to seek and say, I have to have this milestone met or this goal met and have this opportunity come to fruition, not only to matter, number one, but to be really seen and heard and being validated for, again, who you are. And like I said, I want to find out from you, how did that journey now shape you to become the person that you are today? Because I'm a firm believer, Elizabeth, it is the very destination that we should be seeking, is that very journey in and of itself, not the destination. Because we will have that milestone come and go. We will have that goal come and go. We will have that opportunity come and go. But then again, those things are going to be, I won't say fleeting, but won't define us to such an extent, because if we always are thinking, let's say it's about the money or the position or the title, it's always going to be relevant to that. So I just really want to know from you, do you really have taken that stance and saying, hey, I'm about the journey, about the growth, about the mindset and that state of being, versus what others have probably been saying for eons that is actually the reverse you should do?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's sometimes it's really a day-to-day thing, because I definitely have um, realized that I've probably lived with anxiety for a long time in my life, and probably I've not really addressed it until recently. And so even now, like today, for example, our call was at 3 Eastern time, and this morning I had a pretty good morning as far as feeling like I had a checklist, right? And there are certain things that today needed to happen in order for me to feel like certain that I met expectations of my day, and for other people that I want to reach out to, right? So every day is a big deal as far as making a connection, especially. This is a good question and a good time to ask this question, Chris, because I do have an event that is my first event coming up in October. And this is what I talk to about my business coach with a lot, which is, well, okay, that event's going to happen. And then what? Right. And then what? And then what? And so it is not easy to not fixate on that. But like today, I had a big list of people that were very important people that I wanted to email today. And when I got done doing that, I looked at the clock and I thought, okay, I have like an hour and a half before it's time to get on the show with Chris. And you like that? It's Chris's show. That this is our show. um, so, so I when I'm having a good day, then it's easy to push forward and be like, you know what? I just got so much done. If I just do another half an hour, I'll really be a powerhouse today. And that was a mistake. And I almost like didn't eat lunch. And I started to get kind of like, I brought up my anxiety a minute ago because this ties into it, right? I'll drink an extra cup of coffee instead of eat lunch, or I'll forget, to drink water, or sometimes go outside and take a breather, or I'm looking at my computer screen and like straining my neck for a long time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm really getting stuff done. Right. But the whole time I'm straining my neck at trying to email. And I was starting to get really cranky, and I almost thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this call with Chris today, because I'm going to be there, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to really speak, because I almost got really wound up, because I just was like, I could have done, that was the moment, right? Was either push and do another half an hour of emails because I'm on a roll. But I had to stop, because now, to be honest with you, I was starting to feel weird, right? Because I was going longer than I should have without eating lunch, and I was drinking extra coffee and forgetting about water. And I guess that's a good thing, right? That I started to make myself feel a little upset, because my stomach was getting upset, right? Just physically. And I had to be like, whoa, you have to stop right now. So that had to happen, instead of another however many emails to make myself feel better about how much I was getting done today. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Well, that's one thing I would have never known about you, that you would have anxiety. That's something new to me.
Okay.
I'm blown away that I just truly believe, Elizabeth, you're so calm, cool, and collected. You know what to do. You know how to do it, and that's what I love about you. I would have never. You just blew my mind right there. I just couldn't believe that.
Yeah, I get really like we're like what's happening right now. So Hold on, you hit the mute button again.
Hit it, but that's okay. But I got to ask you this. If you recognize now the anxiety, have you been, I truly believe anxiety, ladies and gentlemen, it's a gift, and here's why.
Mm.
There's going to be always a good and a bad to everything in life. But anxiety can literally be that good thing in and of itself, because when we recognize it, it could be, again, keeping us on our toes, keeping us nimble, it's just like fear. It's the same thing to a large degree. I truly believe we can use these things that other people say that are negatives and say, this is what we can do forward, and this is how we can get forward, and this is how we can achieve things. Because that little bit of anxiety or that little bit of fear or that little bit of angst or whatever can keep us on our toes to such a degree, then maybe we can be able to say, I can pivot this way or I can pivot that way, and be not only intentional with it, but be mindful and say, you know what, I'm going to let it be no matter what happens out of this. Because then again, the only thing that I can control is what's in my control, not what someone else is thinking or doing, not what other people are saying and doing in, let's say, the office down the street. You can only do what you can do. And I truly believe, Elizabeth, you've done a fantastic job embracing that, because I truly believe what you have is literally a gift in and of itself. And don't let no one else tell you otherwise, because we do have gifts. We don't have disabilities. We don't have a lesser strength, or we're weak or whatever. We are literally strong by very definition, but we got to tap into that. And maybe sometimes it takes someone like you to be able to come along and say, I really see the gift in you, even though you may not even see it or even believe it. But when you give them that nudge and say, you know what, you got this, you can be able to do this. Again, it's about, in that very right here, there's the little logo about we rise by lifting others. When you help them, get them to where they want to go, not only in business, but maybe more importantly in life, they can see that is that gift, again, the gift of invitation, the gift to connect, the gift to really be intentional and everything. And what does the art of connecting literally state, Elizabeth? It's about a little intentionality mixed in with a little discovery and a little bit of authenticity. And when we do it from that framework, it's truly game on.
Yeah, do you see? I'm on your show and I'm taking notes while you talk. Are you catching that? Yeah, so it's back to what our listeners were saying, right? Matthew and Sue, and the water and the gift of life. And I don't know what exactly the whole conversation is there, but I know that we can use all kinds of analogies with water, but
it's right there.
An aquarium. I'm an Aquarius.
It's right there. Right? The water is the essence of life, not money. We are water.
We are water. Right. Okay. So water. So this is something maybe somebody that's listening can explain this to me, because this is something that I find really fascinating. I know that if you have ever read like a horoscope, right, you might know what your horoscope sign is. And my sun sign is an Aquarius, which is by symbol the water bearer, right? The sign of Aquarius is a person, usually a woman, holding a some kind of container, like a vase of water, and pouring it out. And that's supposed to symbolize, water is eternal life. So the gift of water, the gift of life. But in the world of astrology, Aquarius, the sign itself, is considered an air sign. So one of the things that air signs do, right, is we're up here thinking about stuff in the clouds, is the analogy, right? So if you're into horoscopes, like that works for me. I'm very up here in the clouds a lot, thinking about, oh, we can do this, we can do that. I'm all full of ideas of what could be. But then trying to bear out water, I know that's the physical symbol. And even though I'm not an astrologer and none of that really makes sense to somebody who is, those two symbols really come together a lot. They come together for me, right? Because there's something about being connected to a flow, right? Like if you like the analogy of the flow of water and life, I feel that. And also I'm always like up here, like in the clouds, right? And how to bring that into reality is kind of part of these, like, stay connected with people, right? So the more that we talk out our ideas with each other, then it helps keep you a little bit grounded and a little bit closer to watching those ideas sort of come to life physically for other people and make them real, right? So if astrology works and you like the flow of water and energy, maybe some of those symbols are fun to play with for yourself too. So that.
Yeah, I love that. So it's about that time, ladies and gentlemen, for us again. Sadly, I have to say we have to end our show today. But again, we're just so humbled and honored that you guys have taken time out of your day to watch us and even watch us on a replay. And again, if you would love to come share your story on Conversation for Humanity, it's already in the LinkedIn comment section and also on our YouTube and Facebook page. Come share your story here at calendly.com guest BHT/CSH, and we would love to have you there. But I got to go to you, Elizabeth. What will be a final thought or call to action that you would like to have for everyone watching here tonight?
Yeah, call to action. Go to the link in my LinkedIn profile and click on subscribe to email, and that is my way. You can reply directly to me. I check those replies, and that's my real email address.
Alrighty, and I will put your LinkedIn profile in today's call in a little bit later. But my wife's getting ready to get off work, so I'm glad that I can have this opportunity with you today, Elizabeth. And again, thank you so much, Sue and Matthew, for being on the call today. We greatly appreciate your interactions with you too as well. So I'm just so humbled and honored and everything. So again, from all of us here at Bringing Humanity Together and Adaptive Strategies Group, we're so humbled and honored to have you guys a part of our show. And of course, this show is always about you guys. So again, you have a great day. Make your day on this wonderful Wednesday, and we'll see you next time on Conversation for Humanity. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.